Namaskar. Jñānaśrīmitra was one of the last and greatest philosophers of Buddhist scholastic tradition in India. He flourished in 10th century. He is supposed to be one of the finest exponents of Buddhist epistemology, and his analysis of consciousness, language and knowledge remain subject to scholarly interest in both Indian and global philosophical studies. Jñānaśrīmitra lived in Vikramshila Mahavihar. And Vikramshila Mahavihar, along with Nalanda and Takshila also, served as one of the major centers of Buddhist learning and Buddhist philosophy. Jñānaśrīmitra's intellectual career represents the culmination of the tradition of Buddhist logic initiated by Piṅgala and Dharmakirti, the great philosophers who discussed the epistemology under Buddhist logic. Writing at a time when Buddhist philosophy was engaged in rigorous debate with Nyaya, Mimamsa and Vedanta schools, Jñānaśrīmitra stood firmly against the whole Sanatana tradition and made significant contribution to epistemology, metaphysics and philosophy of language. He is perhaps one of the last sturdy figures in the tradition of Buddhist philosophy. Jñānaśrīmitra's philosophy belongs primarily to Yogacara and Sautrantic synthesis, developed within the epistemological tradition of Buddhist thought. Like Dharmakirti, he regarded valid cognition or pramana as the foundation of philosophical inquiry. He accepted two principal means of valid knowledge: perception, that is pratyaksha, and inference, that is anumana. Obviously, this is the Pramana Mimamsa according to Buddhist philosophy. But Jñānaśrīmitra refined the earlier theories by offering subtle analysis of cognition, conceptual frameworks, and the nature of reality. One of the most important philosophical contributions of Jñānaśrīmitra concerns about the doctrine of self-awareness, Swayam Vedana, and it is supposed to be his own theory, where he argues that every act of cognition is intrinsically aware of itself. Consciousness does not require a second act to know itself. Consciousness itself is aware of itself and the act of cognition. Self-awareness is inseparable from cognition itself. This doctrine became central to later Buddhist epistemology and generated extensive debate with Nyaya philosophers because they reject intrinsic self-awareness and maintain that cognition is known only through subsequent reflection. And the theory of Jñātata, Ghato Maya Jñātah, an attribute called Jñātata is there, separate from the knower. Jñānaśrīmitra also developed sophisticated arguments defending Buddhist idea or Buddhist idealism, and he holds that what appears as an external world is ultimately inseparable from consciousness. So this is Vijnana, Sarvam Khalu Vijnanam, and all great philosophers of Buddhist tradition, they postulate this theory of Vijnana. Although ordinary experience presents objects as existing independently, the philosophical analysis reveals that object and cognition arise together and cannot be established as wholly separate realities. So the cognition is not separate from the object. Therefore, the external world is nothing but the cognition. His treatment of this issue, Jñānaśrīmitra's treatment of this issue is more nuanced than earlier Yogacara formulations, and he responds very carefully to realist objections raised by Nyaya philosophers. And his interpretation of theory of apoha is also very significant. He builds his theory or interpretation on the basis of the postulations of Dingnag and Dharmakirti, but he argued that the words do not denote universal entities existing in reality. Instead, the word signifies its object through exclusion of everything that doesn't belong to its conceptual class. This is apoha. This theory provides a powerful Buddhist response to realist theories of universals, the jati of Nyaya. So the whole Sanatana tradition, Shashwatiktavad, is deconstructed and refuted on the basis of the theory of apoha. Dharmakirti made significant contributions through his works like Apoha Prakarana, Kshanabhanga Adhyaya, Sakar Siddhi Shastra, and several other independent philosophical essays preserved or collected in Jñānaśrīmitra Nibandhavali. But one of his works, though very less known, is related to ChandasЩāstra. And Jñānaśrīmitra contributes to the study of prosody in Buddhist tradition. Commendable editorial and translational work on Vṛttastutimālā of Jñānaśrīmitra, which is his work on prosody or ChandasЩāstra. Commendable editorial and translational work has been done on this work by Professor Mikhail Hahn, Dr. Lata Devkar, and Professor Shrikant Bahulkar and Dr. Maitreyi Tanase. And the rich tradition of ChandasЩāstra and Buddhist tradition we come to know through the work of these scholars. The edition of Vṛttastutimālā with English translation has been recently brought out by Professor Shrikant Bahulkar and Maitreyi Tanase. And earlier, Lata Devkar and in association with Professor Mikhail Hahn has published a critical edition of Vṛttastutimālā with Sanskrit commentary. So we can appreciate now that that alongside Piṅgala tradition of the matrix or ChandasЩāstra and Vedic tradition, Buddhist literature also cultivated its own distinctive system of prosody or ChandasЩāstra. Like Alankara Shastra, of which there is a tradition in Pali language, ChandasЩāstra was also cultivated under the Buddhist tradition. Vedic tradition builds up ChandasЩāstra on the basis of aesthetics of eternalism. And it was from primordial being, it is said, the Purusha, that 7 chandas are born. Chandansi Jaggire Tasmat. And the names of 7 chandas are also given. They are also given in Patanjali Mahabhashya. Anushtup, Trishtup, Jakti, Vrahati, Gayatri, etc. And the mantras of Samhita are also called Chandas. Every mantra or Chandas has an unshakable order. Anupurvi of the syllables is aparivartya or unchangeable. Dirghatamas is one of the foremost philosophical seers and poets of Vedic tradition. Approximately 50 hymns of Rigveda are attributed to him, including the celebrated Asyavami Sukta. Dirghatamas emphasizes the realization of essential principle inherent within meters. There is a tattva in each and every particular meter. Accordingly, within Gayatri resides the principle of Gayatra, and within Trishtubha, the principle of Traishtubha is there. One who skillfully uncovers the inner essence, as though carving and refining it from within, attains Amritapada, says Dirghatamas. That is the state of immortality. In this vision, poetry is not merely verbal composition, it is an experience of Amritatva, immortality itself. So there are several passages in Dirghatamas which emphasize over the experience of Amrita Tattva from Chandas. Yad Gayatre Adi Gayatra Mahitam Traishtubhadva Traishtubham Niratakshata, he says in Rigveda 164th Sukta of first Mandala. I will omit these passages, and several other mantras reveal Dirghatamas as a profound thinker on metaphysics of meter and the aesthetics of metrics or ChandasЩāstra. All forms of artistic creation are fundamentally constituted by Chandas, and the entire cosmos is permeated by the rhythm and meter, that is Chandas. The universe itself is Chandas. The artistic creation or the cosmic poem fashioned by Supreme Being. It is this universe. The Aitreya Brahmana itself identifies Chandas with Shilpa. Consequently, poetic creation or Kavikarma is also a form of Shilpa. Just as every artistic act refines both the creator and sensitive recipient. Atma Samskritir Vai Shilpam, Aitreya says. So it is the refinement of the creator by Shilpa. The poetic composition, Chandas, likewise ennobles both the poet and the connoisseur. Meters are regarded as liberating. They rescue human beings from sin and function as a protective covering or spiritual armor against moral defilement. Chhadanat Chandaha, one that functions as a cover or as a shield to protect from sin, is Chandas. This is the Vyutpatti or etymology given by accepted by Aitreya in Aitreya Aranyaka, cited by Sayana, and other thinkers have also accepted this Vyutpatti. Sayanacharya, in his detailed exposition of Chandas as a protecting cover, cites Aitreya Aranyak and Taittiriya Samhita, also Chandogya Upanishad, and these texts emphasize over the protective and salvaging character of Vedic meters. Chandas or sacred speech is also endowed with rasa. This is also explained by Aitreya Mahidasa. In Aitreya Brahmana, he presents the doctrine of rasa inherent in Chandas through a symbolic narrative. It relates that the essence of rasa or the Vedic meters, the essence or rasa of Vedic meters began to dissipate. It began to ooze out of the meters or the Vedic Chandas, and Prajapati became apprehensive that the vital principle of rasa will altogether depart from the world if so much rasa is oozing out from the chandas. Therefore, he collected this overflowing rasa from chandas into other chandas, which were Lokik chandas. So the essence or rasa of Gayatri was collected in Narashanshi and in subsequently in other Lokik chandas. Bharat Muni in his Nāṭyaśāstra devotes considerable attention to the science of meter. According to him, every meter is presided over by a particular deity, and the employment of a specific meter serves as a mode of worship directed towards that deity. So this is the Divya Bhav of Chandas, and the Deva lies enshrined within each and every chandas. Therefore, chandas are used in 3 savanas. The meters are employed to perform in performance of the savanas, Pratha Savan, Madhyandin Savan, and Antim Savan. And there are particular meters which are employed in Pratha Savan, another set of meters employed in Madhyandin Savan, etc. So this is the idea and this is the aesthetics about ChandasŞāstra in the Vedic tradition. And here the idea of Sanatana percolates the whole philosophy of ChandasŞāstra. Coming to the Buddhist tradition, where Jñānaśrīmitra makes his own contribution to Vṛttastutimālā, it appears that metaphysical foundations of Buddhist philosophy provide a basis for constructing an entirely distinct aesthetics of prosody or ChandasŞāstra. The fundamental constituents of poetic composition in ChandasŞāstra are laya, that is rhythmic dissolution, gati, movement, yati, sesura, and virama, that is pause. Laya signifies not merely rhythm but also dissolution, mrityu, or the end. So the laya is rhythmic pattern or rhythm, and laya is dissolution, death. Every quarter of a metrical verse, every metrical foot, and every word, in fact, embodies laya. So laya is inherent within each and every syllable, word, and 1 quarter of meter and the whole meter and the whole prabandha or composition. In this sense, rhythm itself becomes the poetic verification of the Buddhist doctrine of momentariness, because after each syllable, laya or death occurs. Kshanabhangavada can be realized through the idea of laya in ChandasŞāstra, and rhythm or laya is inseparable from movement, gati, sesura, yati, and virama, that is pause. And these together, all these together, laya, gati, yati, and virama, they generate an aesthetics of prosody or ChandasŞāstra. And the Buddhist tradition subsists on a particular philosophical ideologue to create this aesthetics without compromising with the core ideas of Buddhist philosophy like Apo, Kshanabhangavada, Pratītya Samutpada, etc. Jñānaśrīmitra accepts the idea of Anantya of Chandas, that Chandas can become, the varieties of Chandas are infinite. In the very first stanza of Vṛttastutimālā, he says, Vṛttam samamardha samam vishamam chetyamananti vāgīṣa trividham parārtha vishaye samasato vyasato anantam. Jñānaśrīmitra here, implying shlesha or peronomasia, expounds three principal categories of meter: Sama, Visham, and Ardha Sama. And he also describes the Vratta associated with Manjushri. In this Chandas, he says, for the benefit of others, Parahita, the sages define the threefold deeds of the master of speech, Manjushri, as Sama, Ardha Sama, and Vishama. That is calm, partially calm, and horrific. These are the translations given by Professor Shrikant Bahulkar and Dr. Tanase. The deeds, when summarized, are three, and when elaborated, are innumerable, ananta. So, three types of deeds, Sama, Vishama, and Ardha Sama, they in fact become ananta, innumerable varieties. So this idea of ananti of Chandas is very much accepted in the Sanatana tradition as well, represented by Piṅgala and Bharat Muni, and in the tradition which rests on Kshanabhanga Vada, or the idea of momentariness, there also the varieties become innumerable or ananta. So thus the process of aesthetic experience arising out of the metrical compositions through Laya, Gati, Yati, and Virama can be understood within the framework of Buddhist philosophy as well, whose epistemological metaphysical vision is grounded on the doctrines of Apoha and Pratitya Samutpada, realities from moment to moment. This world is continuously renewed. At every moment it perishes and reborn. Likewise, the aesthetic delight generated by metrical composition is also from moment to moment and is renewed likewise. Applying Buddhist doctrine of Apohavada, Jñānaśrīmitra rejects the notion of infinite proliferations of meters arising from the innumerable combinations of Laghu and Guru. Ananti is there, but the varieties cannot be defined to that level. In Bharat Muni, crores and crores of varieties are born or can be generated from Sama, Vishama, and Ardha Sama Vṛttas. Only out of Sama Vṛttas, 13 crore and more than 13 crore varieties arise. So, in the same way, Piṅgala also defines the enormous numbers arising out of the combinations, permutations and combinations of Laghu Guru in a metrical composition. Jñānaśrīmitra accepts the subtle distinction between Chandas and Vratta. He simplifies the intrinsic designs of several Vṛttas emanating from one single Chandas. One single Chandas gives rise to various Vṛttas. So Vratta is circle. From one Chandas, innumerable possibilities of expansion into or development into Vṛttas are there, but you choose only some. So Jñānaśrīmitra locates one Vratta as an offshoot of a particular Chandas, sometimes 2 or 3. So the Chandas and Vṛttas, the correlationship of both of them, and how various Vṛttas arise from each and every Chanda. Jñānaśrīmitra explains that from Uktam, the corresponding Vratta is Shri. In Bharat Muni's Nāṭyaśāstra, Ukta is classified as a monosyllabic meter, and After Uktam, Bharat Muni enumerates the following sequence of basic meters according to number of syllables. Ukta, of course, has 1 syllable, Atyukta has 2, Madhya has 3, Pratishtha has 4, and Supratishtha has 5. The nomenclatures in Jñānaśrīmitra differs. He also explains how, he also illustrates how a particular vritta arises out of one chandas. Bharat Muni does not describe the prastaras or systematic permutations or proliferations or derivations of the first 5 meters. Only from Gayatri he defines the prastaras or the number of prastaras and the names of vrittas that would arise. For Ukta, Anukta, Madhya, Pratishtha and Supratishtha, he doesn't give the prastaras, but Jñānaśrīmitra does. He says that these chandas are also generating various vrittas. But the varieties, the number of varieties very much differs. In Bharat Muni, Gayatri produces 64 distinct vrittas. Gayatri can produce 64 distinct vrittas. In Piṅgala, there are numerous varieties of Gayatri, like Asuri Gayatri and ranging from 1 syllable Gayatri to 15 syllable Gayatri, which is Asuri Gayatri. Nāṭyaśāstra defines Gayatri with 6 syllables in each foot and 64 distinct vrittas are produced out of the permutations of Lagu Guru in Gayatri. According to Jñānaśrīmitra, Gayatri gives rise only to 3 vrittas, Vaidham, Tanumadhya and Sharanam. In Nāṭyaśāstra, Tanumadhya is accepted and 4 vrittas arising out of Gayatri are defined by Bharat Muni. Tanumadhya, Makaraka, Shirsha, Malini and Malati. The total number of vrittas would be 64, out of which 4 he selects to define and illustrate. Ushnik consists of 7 syllables and is represented by 3 vrittas according to Jñānaśrīmitra: Satirekam, Kumar Lalita and Urdhvagami. By contrast, Nāṭyaśāstra states that Prastara of Ushnik gives rise to 128 vrittas, of which only 2, Uddhata and Bhramar Malika, are defined and illustrated by Bharat Muni. Whereas in Jñānaśrīmitra, 3 meters or 3 vrittas are defined. Anushtup also, as taken up by both Bharat Muni and Jñānaśrīmitra, there are subtle differences. Each foot of Anushtupa consists of 8 syllables, and Jñānaśrīmitra recognizes 3 vrittas coming out of Anushtup: Uttamam, Samani and Pramanika. The Pramanika, as defined or as illustrated by Jñānaśrīmitra, becomes Panchachamar Chanda in later, is defined as Panchachamar Chanda in later tradition of ChandasЩāstra. According to Nāṭyaśāstra, however, Anushtup admits 256 prastaras or permutations, and Bharat Muni describes 4 vrittas out of these: Simha Lekha, Mat Cheshtita, Vidyunmala and Chitta Vilasita. Names are very much different and the characteristics are also different in Piṅgala, Bharata and Jñānaśrīmitra. In the same way, coming to last chandas, 26 syllable meter, Utkriti. Jñānaśrīmitra records two vrittas, Bhujanga Vijrambitam and Apavaha. They are generated out of Utkriti. And then Dandaka he takes up, and several varieties of Dandaka are defined. But Jñānaśrīmitra mentions only two vrittas under Dandaka, Kanda, Vrashti, Prata and Arna. In Nāṭyaśāstra, there are several varieties of Dandaka which are defined. And the permutations of each and every vritta, when combined together, only some vrittas yield as many as 13,42,17,726 varieties or permutations or prastaras. This is only for some vrittas. For Visham vrittas and Ardhasam vrittas, many more proliferations will be there. And this is for Varna vrittas. For Matra vrittas, Matrika Chandas, another set of proliferations or prastaras. So Bharat Muni and Piṅgala, they present the theory of prastara or the methods of prastara primarily to demonstrate the inexhaustible potential of metrical formulations. Unending formulations can be derived. In Jñānaśrīmitra, by contrast, where he doesn't undertake a mathematical enumeration of all possible permutations, he instead confines himself to describing only three vrittas that are aesthetically significant or practically implyable, or a very limited number of vrittas he will define, he will illustrate. Only illustrations are given and names are given in Jñānaśrīmitra. The whole Vṛttastutimālā is presented as a eulogy to Manjushri, and by Shlesha, the characteristics of a name of a particular meter can also be understood. Names and defining characteristics of the vrittas as enumerated by Jñānaśrī also differ considerably from those found in Piṅgala and Nāṭyaśāstra. A comprehensive and comparative study of the theories of meter and metrical classifications presented by Piṅgala, Bharat Muni and Jñānaśrīmitra remains an important subject for further research. Such an investigation would make a significant contribution to the discipline of ChandasŞāstra and the aesthetics of ChandasŞāstra under the Vedic tradition, and the aesthetics of ChandasŞāstra under the Buddhist tradition. It's a very interesting field for investigations. Thank you very much.